Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. And recently I just got done building a new Intel build on the LGA1851 socket with a Core Ultra 265K. And to cool that, I decided to take the Liquid Freezer 360 that I have and move it over to that case. And it's in that height Y60 case that I have back there. So Arctic has recently released a new contact frame for specifically the Arctic Liquid Freezer 3, all Liquid Freezer 3 AIOs, and it is specifically geared towards the LGA 1851 socket. Now, since the existing contact frame that comes with the AIOs can be used for either the LGA 1700 or the LGA 1851 socket, it just didn't quite line up the heatsink on the AIO with the hotspot on the LGA 1851 socket. So the new contact frame better aligns the heatsink that, according to Arctic's internal testing on a Core Ultra 285K, shows an improvement of around 7 degrees. And that's because it better aligns that heatsink with the hotspot on the CPU. And as you can see here, the one with the green tape is the new contact plate. It shifts the heatsink up a few millimeters, maybe about 1/4 of an inch. Now in this video, I'm going to show you how to actually install the Arctic Liquid Freezer 3 on the new LGA 1851 socket, as well as we're going to test the new contact frame performance. Since I have a Core Ultra 265K, and not a 285K, I don't expect to see the same level of improvement as Arctic did in their testing. However, the 265K and the 285K are fairly similar. The 285K is clocked a little bit higher, and it has 4 additional E-cores. So we should see some benefit due to the similarities between the two CPUs. The contact plate has been released earlier this year. I'm not sure if this is now included with the Arctic Liquid Freezer 3. However, if you already have an Arctic Liquid Freezer 3 with an LGA 1851 CPU, you can find these on Amazon. So I was actually quite surprised at the results that I saw with the new contact plate. So quick overview, I was using hardware info 64. And on the left side here, where this is the table I took a snapshot of with the old contact plate, and then on the right, which I've labeled, is a snapshot using the new contact plate. And as you can see, the temperatures have pretty much dropped across the board, with the average going from 86 degrees under the old contact plate down to 78 degrees with the new contact plate, which is an 8-degree drop, which is very nice. So that gives you a lot more headroom, especially if you want to overclock this CPU. So personally, overall, I would say it is well worth the investment to buy the new contact plate. You're going to get much better temperatures using it, and it's just going to give you, like I was saying, more playroom if you decide to overclock the CPU, which I've heard is really good with overclocking. So installing the Arctic Liquid Freezer 3 on an Intel system is a little different than in like an AM4 or AM5, because instead of having brackets, we need to use this contact plate. So what that means is this right here that's already securing the CPU down is going to have to come off, and we're going to replace it with this contact plate. And then we'll be able to secure this to that contact plate. So all the things you're going to need is you're going to need to figure out if you want to use the 3-in-1 cable where you can manage the VRM, the radiator fans, and the pump all on the one cable, or do you want the cable that allows you to manage each one independently? Then you're going to need this. I can't remember what it's called, but there's essentially a wrench screwdriver thing in there that's going to allow you to unscrew the screws that are holding this in and take them out. So after you remove the screws in the bracket, keep hold of those, you want to lose that. But we're going to mount this with screws that are supplied with the Arctic Liquid Freezer 3. You're going to need the thermal paste, and of course the water pump with the VRM fan cover. So one of the issues I ran in specific to this case is there's not enough room between the radiator mount and the motherboard to just drop the whole AIO in, where the fans were already mounted to the radiator. I had to actually take those off, then take the mounting bracket off the top of the fan and slide it in between here. But this is the first time I've had to do that. Most cases that I've worked with have had enough room. So we are going to go and disconnect this and put the new contact plate on, and then we'll put the AIO in here and install it to the CPU. Actually, the first thing that I'm going to do is get some painter's tape, because we are going to tape the back of this bracket, which is holding the CPU contact bracket in place, just in case. I doubt there's any adhesive, I don't know, but better safe than sorry, because once you take that off, this could just fall off and dangle around in your case. Get a little painter's tape, and we're going to tape it onto the motherboard. Painter's tape isn't overly sticky, so it'll come off nice and easy without damaging any of the components. We're just going to do a little there. It's not very heavy, it doesn't need very much, so that should do the trick. Right, now that mounting bracket in behind is secure, we are going to loosen this, because if we left that pushed all the way down, that's a lot of tension, and this will just fly up as we're loosening these screws. So this way, there's no tension, and we're going to loosen a little bit at a time going around. It just comes off like that. This was not on very tight, so you'll get an idea of how much force you'll actually need to screw down the replacement contact plate. So before, after you get that off, if you don't already have the CPU in there, make sure you put the CPU in the socket, just because it needs to be there. Before you put the mounting bracket on as well, you don't want to damage any of the pins. Oh, one thing I forgot to mention is that this was mounted like that. There's an arrow in this bottom corner. There's also an arrow in the bottom corner here. Make sure they are lined up the same. So that's just going to rest right on top. There we go. Now we need to get the replacement screws. Remember to keep what we just took off someplace secure. You can always throw it back into the motherboard box. Put that in a little bit. I'm not going to tighten too much until I get them all in, and then again I'm going to go around. Now I'm just going to go and give it a little bit of a turn, going around it, so that we evenly apply pressure across the CPU. So all those are snug enough. Again, just go based off the feeling from when you're unscrewing those, as far as how tight you need to screw them down. So after you decide which of the cables, if you want to go with the 3 separate cables or the one that can control everything with one, there is a pin in here, and that's where you're going to push it into. And then these are all going to get tucked. Let's see here if I can get that. They're all going to get tucked into here. So they're out of the way, into the side. So normally there would be a some kind of bracket running along here where you'd have to hold the radiator up while you screw it into the bracket, and it would require using these screws. However, I didn't have enough room between the bracket and the motherboard cables, so I actually had to take the bracket off. So I take the bracket off and wedge it, let's see, in between the fans and the radiator. So now I just need to mount this bracket back on. So this is just going to drop right in there. one-handed, this is getting a little cumbersome. So in most cases, you're going to have a bracket that's going to be at the top that's going to mount into, and you're going to screw these into each one of these holes, and that's going to securely mount it. Again, like I said, that's not the case with this. Instead, I just need to mount these all in. All right, now that the radiator mounted, we are going to connect this to the CPU. This is going to mount with the radiator hoses pointing down. So first things first, we're going to put some thermal paste. I think I might be running it. Let's find out. So a strip like that right down the middle, that'll push out and get to all the different corners. This is non-conductive, so you don't have to worry about shorting anything, but you don't want to put too much in there that you're going to get gunk everywhere. It's just going to be messy. You don't want any of that getting into the pins because you'll never get it clean. If you want to be really detailed, there's like little spatula type things that you can get that you can spread it all over nice and even. I'm just going to line this up with those holes, and that's where we're going to mount it to. So we're going to get one side connected, and then once that's in place, we're going to go to the other side. I only screwed that in lightly. We're going to go to the other side and get that one connected as well. We don't want to. There we go. Nothing's moving, so they're both secured. Then we can just tighten one a little bit at a time. Again, you don't want to tighten one side because then you're going to have too much pressure and it might not seat properly. There we go. And we have a little bit of thermal paste coming out the side. We're going to wipe that up. Then we can connect the VRM fan magnetically. So the connector label, fan, that is for the radiator fans. We're going to connect that to the pin over here, showing CPU fan. Next one's going to be labeled pump, and that's going to go over here to system pump. One of the cables is labeled VRM. That's just going to go to any of the sys fan headers. So last but not least, we have the ARGB header. That is going to go, I got some cables in the way here. Let's see if I can show it. It's going to go down here. These white headers. So it's got a 2-pin, a space, and a 1-pin. That's the same as this, and it's going to have the labeling JARGB.